They call Formula One the pinnacle of motorsport, a temple of precision, courage, and engineering perfection. But the truth is darker. Perfection is forgotten. What the world remembers are the moments when everything broke, when carbon fiber turned to shrapnel, when legends chose violence, when a driver didn't just crash, he made history bleed. These are the collisions that split fan bases, rewrote rulebooks, and left only one question circling the paddock like vultures. Was it an accident? Or an assassination at 200 miles per hour? From spectacular survivals that defied physics, to career-ending trauma that haunts drivers decades later, to crashes so controversial they're still triggering flame wars on Reddit. This journey doesn't begin with tragedy. It begins with disbelief. Let's start with the crashes that shouldn't have been survivable. Valencia 2010. Mark Webber, buried in 17th after a disastrous start, is closing on Heikki Kovalainen's Lotus at over 300 kilometers per hour, 186 miles per hour, down the main straight, but he's closing too fast. Webber made contact with Kovalainen's right front wheel and the Red Bull launched skyward like a missile, rotating through a full 360-degree backflip while airborne. The car flew so high it struck the overhead advertising banner several meters above the barriers. The car came crashing down upside down onto the tyre barrier, then flipped right side up with an impact registering at 17 G. The immediate reaction was terror. As former F1 driver David Coulthard later remarked, motor racing has just seen one of its luckiest days. That could have been a very, very bad incident. The commentary also immediately drew parallels to Webber's terrifying 1999 Le Mans crash, where his Mercedes also went airborne. Webber's condition? Completely unharmed. Not a scratch, no concussion, not even one broken bone. He climbed out, ripped off his steering wheel, threw it in frustration, then chucked his radio headset. Classic Webber tantrum. While Webber initially blamed misjudging Kovalainen's braking, Kovalainen vehemently claimed Webber was entirely at fault. When Webber reflected on the incident, he summed up his feelings perfectly. Yes, the gymnastics was impressive, but I was furious with the points I had lost. The crash has been viewed millions of times because it looks impossible. Cars aren't supposed to fly like that. Webber's Red Bull said, "Hold my energy drink and watch this." He defied gravity in the most spectacular way possible. Pure spectacle. Zero controversy. Just a reminder that sometimes you can walk away from the impossible. Montreal, 2007. Robert Kubica, chasing down Jarno Trulli's Toyota at the hairpin on lap 26, mistimes his move completely and slams into the concrete wall at over 257 kilometers per hour, 160 miles per hour. The impact registered 75 G, enough force to turn your brain into jelly and should be fatal. His BMW literally disintegrated. The car bounced back across the track, flipped multiple times, and hit the opposite barrier. When it finally stopped, there was no recognizable car left. Just carbon fiber confetti scattered across the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Miraculously, Kubica walked away with a sprained ankle and mild concussion. That's it. He was back racing just 2 races later, and he came back angry. The next year at Montreal, the same track that nearly killed him, Kubica won his first and only F1 Grand Prix. The crash is still studied by safety engineers because it proved modern F1 cars can protect drivers from impacts that defy medical science. Kubica proved that sometimes miracles can happen at 257 kilometers per hour, 160 miles per hour. We've seen physics defied and survival elevated to an art form. But what happens when the chaos isn't a miraculous escape, but a catastrophic mistake? When a driver's career isn't defined by a crash, they survived, but by the reckless choice they made? Now, we move to the moments where driver intent, not fate, took center stage. Spa-Francorchamps, 2012. Romain Grosjean had a reputation. Multiple first-lap incidents in Spa would make it official. Grosjean started P9, right in the heart of the grid's top contenders. The lights go out. Heading into the first corner, La Source, at over 200 kilometers per hour, 124 miles per hour, Grosjean makes a strong start, but immediately cuts across Lewis Hamilton's McLaren, squeezing him toward the pit wall. Grosjean makes contact with Hamilton. The Lotus launches skyward like a missile and flies over Hamilton's McLaren, missing his helmet by centimeters.
Oh dear, Romain Grosjean and Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton all coming to grief at La Source.
Then skips across the top of Fernando Alonso's Ferrari, missing Alonso's head by less than a foot. The car then slams into the back of Sergio Perez, while Hamilton also hits Kamui Kobayashi. 3 title contenders, Alonso, Hamilton, and Perez, were eliminated in less than 3 seconds, and somehow no drivers were seriously injured. The FIA's response was nuclear. Grosjean was handed a one-race ban, the first driver banned since Michael Schumacher in 1994, and a €50,000 fine. Mark Webber labelled Grosjean a first-lap nutcase, and Hamilton was furious about lost championship points. The real story, however, is one of redemption. Humbled by his mistakes, Grosjean completely turned his career around and went on to earn 10 podium finishes in Formula One. Then came the ultimate twist of fate. The Halo safety device, a cockpit shield introduced because of the dangers highlighted by crashes like his, would later become the very thing that saved his life during the terrifying fireball crash in Bahrain in 2020. Sometimes the universe has a dark sense of irony. He got a penalty, but did he deserve a ban? Let us know in the comments below. We've seen spectacular survivals and reckless chaos. But now we're entering darker territory. These next crashes didn't just end races, they ended dreams, careers, and in one case, a life. Hungary, 2009. Qualifying, Q2. Felipe Massa is flat out down the main straight at 262 km per hour, 162 miles per hour, when an 800-gram suspension, spring from Rubens Barrichello's Brawn GP, falls off and bounces down the track. The spring strikes Massa directly in the helmet, just above his left eye, at a combined closing speed of over 250 km per hour, 155 miles per hour. The force of the impact was immense, penetrating the helmet and knocking him unconscious instantly. Massa's Ferrari doesn't slow down. His foot stays on both the accelerator and brake pedals as the car slams head-on into the tyre barrier at 100 km per hour, 62 miles per hour. The injuries were critical: a fractured skull above the left eye, a severe concussion that resulted in immediate unconsciousness, and brain swelling demanding immediate medical intervention. Massa was airlifted to the hospital where he underwent emergency surgery to the area surrounding his left eye. His condition was initially described as life-threatening but stable. To ensure he could safely return to racing, Massa later required a second operation to insert a titanium plate into his skull to strengthen the area where the bone was damaged. Massa missed the final 7 races of the 2009 season. The true cruelty of fate? This crash came just as he was fighting for his career. Only 9 months before, Lewis Hamilton had snatched the 2008 championship from Massa's hands by 1 point on the final seconds of the season. He was driven, he was hungry, and the 2009 season was meant to be his redemption. After the accident, Massa was never the same driver. He returned in 2010, but the fearless racer was gone. He became more cautious, and he never won another Grand Prix in his remaining 8 seasons in F1. Massa himself said, "I don't remember anything from the accident. The last thing I remember is being behind Rubens, and then it's blank." It was 2009 Massa's stolen championship. We'll never know. What we do know is that 800-gram spring ended the Felipe Massa we knew. Accidents are cruel. Bad luck is devastating. But what happens when the crash is no accident at all? When a driver turns their car into a weapon? When the goal isn't just to win, but to eliminate the rival? Welcome to the sport's darkest territory, the calculated collision. Europe, 1997. The championship decider, and Michael Schumacher is leading Jacques Villeneuve by 1 point. Schumacher was trying to deliver Ferrari's first drivers' championship since 1979, an 18-year drought. Villeneuve was trying to become Canada's first ever world champion.
What I'm afraid of is maybe, to be taken out of the race. That's the only negative side to this race.
Lights out, and Schumacher takes the lead for most of the race.
And it's go, 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 go! Villeneuve gets away and Schumacher gets away better.
But in the final stint, Villeneuve's Williams proves to be the significantly faster car. He spends the next few laps chewing up the distance, putting Schumacher under extreme pressure. It's only a matter of time. Lap 48, the dry sack corner. Villeneuve dives down the inside alongside Schumacher at approximately 150 km per hour, 93 miles per hour. Villeneuve has the inside line and he's going to take the lead. Then, Schumacher turns right into Villeneuve's side pod. This was no racing incident or lapse in judgment. This was deliberate. Michael Schumacher, the dominant figure in F1 and a multiple world champion, openly turned his Ferrari into a weapon. The impact was immediate. Schumacher's right front wheel tore into Villeneuve's left side pod. The consequence for the aggressor was swift. The Ferrari suspension collapsed, the wheel was ripped clean off, and Schumacher veered into the gravel trap, his race instantly over. But the victim, Villeneuve's Williams, kept running. Though battered, the car was still drivable. He managed to limp across the finish line in 3rd place, a position that was more than enough to crown Jacques Villeneuve the 1997 Formula One world champion. The verdict delivered by the administration was unprecedented and devastating. Michael Schumacher was officially disqualified from the 1997 season, forfeiting his second-place championship finish. There was no fine, no ban, just the brutal public humiliation of having his name erased completely from the final standings, as if he had never even competed. The press immediately descended, launching a brutal global campaign of character assassination. Across continents, the headlines screamed the verdict of public opinion. Germany's own Bild newspaper denounced him with the infamous phrase, "Schumy's shame." Meanwhile, the British newspaper The Times declared he had sacrificed his reputation by an act of such cynicism. Did Schumacher deserve to be erased? Even today, fans are split. But here's the thing. This wasn't his first time. 3 years earlier at Adelaide 1994, he'd collided with Damon Hill in eerily similar circumstances. That time, he won the title. This time, karma caught up to him. Schumacher later admitted regret. In 2009, "If I could have my career over again, I would do some things differently." Jerez 1997 is one of them. It was a violent act, pure and simple, an assault carried out at 150 kilometers per hour, 93 miles per hour. It stands as a shocking reminder that when titles are on the line, even the sport's greatest legends will sacrifice everything and fall from grace. Silverstone 2021. This was the championship showdown everyone was anticipating. Lewis Hamilton versus Max Verstappen, the reigning champion against the relentless young challenger. The rivalry was a simple clash of experience versus youth, Mercedes against Red Bull, but the stakes were huge. Verstappen entered Hamilton's home race with a significant 32-point lead in the championship, putting immense pressure on Hamilton to deliver. The atmosphere was explosive, with 140,000 British fans focused on a single demand: a victory for their local hero. Lap 1, Copse Corner, one of the fastest corners in F1. Hamilton goes for a move that's either brilliant racecraft or attempted murder, depending on which side of the internet you ask. The contact sends Verstappen's Red Bull into the barriers at 290 kilometers per hour, 180 miles per hour. The impact measured 51 G, the kind of hit that ends careers. Verstappen's car hit so hard it moved the tyre barrier several meters backward. This is the point where the incident became toxic. Hamilton kept his car in the race. As Verstappen was being pulled from the wreckage and airlifted to the hospital, Hamilton powered onto the win, openly celebrating a victory secured amidst his rival's near catastrophe. Verstappen's condition? No serious injuries. Bruising, soreness, but cleared to race the next weekend in Hungary. The Red Bull's safety cell had done its job perfectly, absorbing the 51G impact that could have been catastrophic. The aftermath was nuclear. Christian Horner called it amateur, and his victory was hollow. Helmut Marko wanted Hamilton banned. Toto Wolff blamed Verstappen's defending. The stewards gave Hamilton a 10-second penalty, which he overcame to win. Racing incident or assassination attempt? The stewards' split decision only fueled the fire, proving that even a small penalty for a 51G contact can secure a win, but cost a legend his moral high ground. So tell me, Team Lewis or Team Max? The war continues in the comments below. We've seen shocks. We've seen careers end. But before we get to the darkest moments, let me tell you about a man who literally came back from hell. It's Nürburgring, 1976, known simply as the Green Hell. Niki Lauda, who was leading the championship by 23 points, had lobbied to boycott the race, calling the track too dangerous. However, he was outvoted, leaving him with no choice but to race anyway. Lap 2 at the terrifying Bergwerk section. A sweeping left-hander taken at over 200 kilometers per hour, 124 miles per hour. Without warning, Niki Lauda's Ferrari suddenly snapped right due to a rear suspension failure. The car was sent spearing off the track, hitting the barrier before bouncing back across the circuit, directly into the path of oncoming cars, where it was struck. The fuel tank immediately ruptured into flames. Lauda was trapped in the cockpit, his seatbelt jammed, leaving him inside the inferno for a devastating 55 seconds. 4 drivers stopped and ran to help. Brett Lunger, Harold Ertel, Guy Edwards, and Arturo Mazzario. They pulled Lauda from the burning wreckage with their bare hands. The fire left behind a horrifying record of destruction. His body was scarred by third-degree burns across his head, face, and hands. He had lost most of his right ear, and his eyelids were severely burned. But the invisible wounds were just as dire. His lungs suffered severe damage from the toxic fumes he inhaled, quickly resulting in blood poisoning. Lauda was airlifted to hospital and given his last rites by a Catholic priest. Doctors gave him a 20% chance of survival as the newspapers prepared his obituary. Then the impossible happened. Lauda started to recover. After enduring multiple surgeries, primarily to restore the function of his severely burned eyelids, Lauda made a choice. He refused lengthy cosmetic procedures, opting instead to cover his prominent head and face scars with the iconic red sponsorship cap. This focused, functional choice cemented his new image. In an act that stunned the sporting world, Lauda returned to the cockpit at the Italian Grand Prix, a mere 6 weeks after the near-fatal crash. His face was still bandaged, and he was in blinding pain, admitting he was absolutely petrified. Despite the unimaginable trauma, he qualified 5th and finished the race in 4th place. The effort was a physical torment. A journalist witnessed him in the pits, peeling bloody bandages from his scalp. The agony was clear, but Lauda had just won the first, hardest battle, keeping his championship hopes alive. Lauda would go on to lose the 1976 championship by a single point after making the gut-wrenching decision to withdraw from the rain-soaked final race in Japan. His damaged tear ducts meant he simply could not blink properly in the treacherous wet conditions. But Lauda wasn't done. He won the World Championship again in 1977 and again in 1984, 3-time world champion. Proof that some men are literally too stubborn to die. Niki Lauda survived the unsurvivable and came back stronger. He proved that the human spirit can overcome anything, even 800-degree flames and a priest reading you your last rites. If Lauda's comeback was a resurrection, then what happened next in Bahrain was biblical, because sometimes you literally walk out of fire. Bahrain, 2020, lap 1, turn 3. What seemed like routine first lap contact became the most terrifying 28 seconds in modern F1 history. Grosjean's Haas clips Daniel Kvyat's AlphaTauri and slams into the steel barriers at 192 km per hour, 119 miles per hour.
And a big fire there as they exited out of turn 3, and that looks very nasty indeed, and unsurprisingly, that is a red flag.
The impact measured 67 G. The crash barrier split like paper. Grosjean's car penetrated the steel, splitting completely in half. The front section, with Grosjean trapped inside, wedged into the barrier. The rear half tore away and immediately erupted in flames. For 28 seconds, Grosjean was trapped in an inferno. The fuel tank had ruptured and the car was completely engulfed. The medical team couldn't even see him through the flames. Everyone thought they were watching someone die live on television. Then, like something out of a biblical story, a figure emerged from the fire. Grosjean, climbing around the barrier that had trapped him, helped by Marshals Alan van der Merwe and Dr. Ian Roberts, the phoenix rising from the ashes. The survival gear performed a near miracle. After 28 seconds trapped in the fire, the list of injuries was almost unbelievable. No broken bones and no internal injuries. The only damage was second-degree burns on his hands and ankles, the only patches of skin exposed between his racing suit, gloves, and boots. Grosjean spent 3 nights in hospital, then flew home to Switzerland. He never raced in F1 again, not because he couldn't, but because he chose not to. The crash changed him. He moved to IndyCar, where he said he felt reborn. The halo saved his life. Without that titanium bar, Grosjean's head would have hit the barrier at 67 G. Instead, the halo deflected the impact, sheltering him from the steel that should have killed him. Grosjean later said,
"I'm the man that walked out of fire."
And honestly, that's exactly what he is. Living proof that sometimes all the safety innovations come together for one perfect miracle. We have seen remarkable survival and unbelievable resilience. Prepare for the darkest chapter of F1 history. Because some collisions are an act of calculated revenge. Suzuka, 1990. The championship decider, Ayrton Senna versus Alain Prost. The most bitter rivalry in F1 history was about to reach its darkest chapter. The backstory begins a year earlier at Suzuka 1989. Senna and Prost collided, but Senna restarted and won, only to be disqualified by the FIA president after the race, handing the championship to Prost. Senna was convinced the disqualification was a political favor. Balestre, a Frenchman, was protecting his countrymen. Senna vowed revenge. Fast forward to 1990. Senna leads the championship by 9 points. If he finishes ahead of Prost, he's world champion. Senna was furious before the race even began. The FIA had moved pole position to the dirty right side of the track, a worse angle into turn 1 with less grip.
The right-hand side is pole position and the track is dirty there. Senna asked for the pole position to be changed to the left. His request, rather, was refused.
Senna protested, and race director Roland Brunseraude initially agreed to move it back. But that night, Jean-Marie Balestre personally overruled the decision. Race day. Lights out. Prost, starting second on the clean side, got a better launch. By the time they reached turn 1 at approximately 170 miles per hour, 274 kilometers per hour, Prost was ahead. Senna never lifted, aiming his McLaren MP4/5B straight at Prost's Ferrari 641. Senna made contact with Prost, spinning their cars into the gravel trap. Both drivers out, both cars destroyed. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment decision. This was premeditated. Senna had entered the day with a clear, aggressive condition for the race start. Prost knew the moment the car settled that the fight was lost, climbing out as his championship aspirations expired in a cloud of dust. But for Ayrton Senna, the violent, intentional impact was a victory. It only took 2 seconds for Senna to secure his second world championship through sheer elimination. The aftermath was explosive. Prost in the post-race press conference was furious. What Senna did today was absolutely disgusting. He is a man without value. If he wants the world championship that badly, he can have it. The FIA took no action, no penalty, no investigation. Senna, however, stayed silent for a year. It wasn't until 1991 that he finally admitted the full truth. I said to myself, okay, you try to work cleanly, and you get screwed by certain people. All right, if tomorrow Prost beats me off the line at the first corner, I will go for it, and he better not turn in because he's not going to make it. Accident, or score settled at 170 miles per hour. Senna had just confessed to deliberately crashing into Prost, using his car as a weapon to win a world championship through premeditated collision. After Suzuka 1990, the two were enemies, and they didn't speak for years. Their relationship was one of the most toxic feuds in all of sport. But time heals wounds, and by 1993, with Alain Prost announcing his retirement, they began to reconcile. At Prost's final race in Australia, the world witnessed an unforgettable moment as Senna pulled Prost onto the top step of the podium and embraced him. In that moment, Prost forgave him. The fierce rivals began to spend time together, building a genuine friendship. Senna would call Prost frequently, seeking his advice and confessing that he actually missed their rivalry, as no other driver motivated him in the same way. The greatest feud in F1 was quietly blossoming into one of its greatest friendships. However, it lasted only 6 months, when Ayrton Senna was tragically killed at Imola in 1994. At his funeral, Alain Prost was a pallbearer. He delivered the final painful verdict on their journey. When Ayrton died, a part of me died too. This was the ultimate price of a championship, an act of revenge that defined a legend's fall from grace. But their magnificent story ultimately proved that even the deepest hatred can give way to genuine, profound respect. If you were in Prost's seat, would you have been able to forgive him? Revenge, feuds, title fights. In a world of heroes and villains, F1 could always find its narrative. But there is one final chapter. A collision that silences all debate and strips away all the spectacle. This pivotal moment offered no championship, no miracle, and no room for argument. It was a tragedy that didn't just end a life, it changed the sport forever and served as a chilling reminder that some risks are just not worth the price. Suzuka, 2014. Typhoon fan phone was battering the Japanese coast. The track was flooded, zero visibility, and emergency helicopters couldn't even take off. But the race happened anyway. Lap 42, with heavy rain falling, Adrian Sutil's Sauber aquaplanes off the track at the Dunlop curve and crashes into the outside barrier. A recovery tractor is immediately dispatched to clear the wreckage. Double yellow flags were waved, but critically, no safety car was deployed. 1 lap later, Jules Bianchi approached the same corner at 213 kilometers per hour, 132 miles per hour. He hits the same standing water, loses control, and veers right, directly toward the recovery vehicle. The impact was catastrophic. Bianchi's Marussia slammed into the crane's left rear wheel at 123 kilometers per hour, 76 miles per hour. The force of the slide sent the car directly beneath the crane, where the roll bar was sheared off, and his helmet made direct contact with the crane's rigid steel structure. The resulting force was so immense, it moved the heavy recovery vehicle off the ground for a second. His head took a peak impact of 254 G. Silence fell over the cockpit. He was unconscious immediately and unresponsive to the team radio or the marshals. The typhoon made a helicopter evacuation impossible, forcing the medical team to stabilize him at the crash site before his transfer by ambulance. The diagnosis was definitive and devastating. He suffered a diffuse axonal injury, one of the most severe brain injuries possible. Despite emergency surgery to reduce the swelling and an induced coma, the outcome was sealed. Jules Bianchi never woke up. For 9 months, the F1 community held its breath, praying alongside his family while Jules lay unresponsive. But on July 17th, 2015, the fight ended. Jules Bianchi died from his injuries at the age of 25, becoming the first driver fatality in the sport since Ayrton Senna 21 years earlier. Could it have been avoided? The FIA investigation found multiple contributing factors: track conditions, car speed, and the presence of a recovery vehicle on track, and the questions still haunt the sport. But from tragedy came progress. The virtual safety car was introduced in 2015, stricter wet weather protocols, and most importantly, the Halo, the device that has since saved multiple lives, including Grosjean's in Bahrain. Jules never fulfilled his dreams, but his sacrifice ensured others could fulfill theirs. Jules was Charles Leclerc's godfather, close friend, and mentor. Leclerc credits Bianchi's fierce work ethic with shaping his own approach to racing, as he continues to pay tribute to him on his helmet at every race. His legacy is etched into every safety innovation, every life saved, and every driver who walks away from a crash that should have been fatal. Rest in peace, Jules. Your sacrifice made the sport safer for everyone. That's our list, the 10 most hated crashes in F1 history. We've seen everything from miraculous survivals and cynical betrayals, all the way to the one-defining tragedy that changed the sport forever. Some were unintentional, some were outright assassinations. But every single one reminds us that in Formula One, the difference between glory and disaster is measured in milliseconds. If this video stirred up as much debate as these crashes did, hit the like button. Let me know in the comments which collision you think was the most unforgivable, and make sure you subscribe, because the F1 drama never ever ends.